We are on air. It is Thursday, March 10th. Thank you guys all for joining. We're going to do a quick development task check-in today. A couple of general announcements first. As you all know, if you donate to Backdrop, we will mail out a t-shirt or hoodie as a thank you gift for your donation. For $25 you get a shirt, for $50 you get a hoodie. Wes is wearing a hoodie. I have some stuff that I need to mail out. Apologies in advance for not getting it out yet. I'll go today after the meeting, I promise. So we will slowly mail you t-shirts and hoodies for your donations. We also have free PHP Storm licenses, which we can get you right away if you are a member of the Backdrop Contrib group. If you want a PHP Storm license and you're not yet a member of the Contrib group, we can't give one to you because PHP Storm needs a way to know that you're allowed to have one, so you have to be in that group. If you've contributed a module theme or layout, you can end up in that group. Also, if you're just interested in helping us maintain documentation or help manage the issue queue, we are working on right now an addition to the contributed agreement that will make it easier for non-coders to join that group as well, or at least clearer what is required. So that's coming soon. And then more exciting updates. Guys, we have a new PMC member. We added Wes to be our front-end constituent guy to make sure we're not doing anything crazy in Backdrop that's going to upset the HTML, CSS, JavaScript ninjas of the world. So that's really exciting. We're currently in the process of growing our management structures, both the project management committee and then followed by core committers to try and make sure that we can handle the massive onslaught of people that are going to be showing up in the Backdrop community over the next 2 years. So yeah, congrats, Wes. Thank you so much for agreeing to be part of the PMC and helping us figure out what that will entail over the next few months and years here. So yay. We do have a couple of other constituents we're currently looking at reviewing. We're hoping to get a non-coder site builder type up just to help us figure out user interface things and what the non-coders like. We're also looking for somebody who's really super familiar with Contrib, so somebody who has maybe ported or written a lot of modules would be a great person for that. Somebody who's really familiar with Backdrop's API to make sure that our API stays in a good position for all of the future. And then we're also looking for somebody who is a representative of a web development company. It don't have to be a Backdrop company, Drupal company, WordPress company, just all whatever is good. And we've got a couple people in mind for some of these positions, but we are always interested in people who are looking for ways to contribute and maybe haven't felt a way yet, who might have good visions for the future of Backdrop as well. So get involved, and we are happy to have a growing management structure. Hooray. Nate, speaking of growing, let's turn it over and talk about how our community has been growing.
Sure thing. Yeah, I want to add that I'm super excited about adding new members. I'm really also excited, we've been growing the PMC first, but adding more committers. The committer list ultimately should be larger than the PMC, and so that'll be really exciting to start working on expanding that in the coming months as well. Okay, anyway, community growth. Lots of things happened this past week. In the Backdrop Contrib group on GitHub, we now have 229 total projects consisting of modules, themes, and layouts. That's 7 new projects since last week, which is fantastic. In addition to the total number of projects, there are 152 of those that have official releases on backdropcms.org. That's 2 new official projects since last meeting. Of those projects, there are 204 releases, 3 new releases since last meeting. There are 49 total Backdrop Contrib authors. We have 1 new member this past week. Welcome, Sentai Digital, to the Contrib group. We're really excited to have you. We also have 2 open applications that are currently in the midst of being processed, one of whom, Eric, is actually here. So we're working on it. But it's so great to see new contributors coming in from all different stripes. and helping to make Backdrop a more robust platform. Let's see. On backdropcms.org, we have 112 total user accounts. Only 2 new people have signed up since last week, probably because right now there's not a lot of motivation to create accounts on backdropcms.org. But as we work to expand the integration between GitHub and backdropcms.org, there'll be more reasons for people to have user accounts. We've got a section down here for GitHub automation, but I'll jump into a little preview. That's we currently have an issue with the way that we manage contrib repositories. Right now everybody has commit access to every repository, and we're considering shifting that around a little bit to make it so that you only have commit access to the ones that you actually are maintainers for, rather than this whole batch thing. The way it is because the way it is now is because GitHub previously just didn't have the ability to give individuals commit access. You had to give groups commit access. And it was just too much overhead to set up a group for every individual contrib project. But now you can manage every contrib project individually and say this person may have commit access and this person may have commit access with no groups, which makes life a lot easier for us. So in the future, hopefully we'll see that we'll be able to manage that probably over the API from backdropcms.org, because the permission system on GitHub is still a little bit too it's not quite flexible enough to actually manage that on GitHub itself, but you can do it through the API. So we'll probably see some of that happening on backdropcms.org in the future. Okay, let's talk about infrastructure. Infrastructure are things around the Backdrop project that help sustain the software. Most of that is backdropcms.org. The one item that's been on our list for ages now, one of the items, is usage statistics. Usage statistics, we finally have crunching and calculating on backdropcms.org, which is very exciting. However, it's not yet public. So I have a URL here in the agenda that is the like the usage statistics for Backdrop itself, but I doubt anybody can actually look at it unless they're an administrator on the site. That might be a couple people in this meeting, but you probably will mostly get access denied. As a preview, we know there are 200, roughly, Backdrop websites that are reporting usage. From before we ran the number crunching script, after we removed all the test bots and everything like that, we know that there's been roughly 1,200 websites that have actually checked in. I have a feeling like because sites are only calculated if they're checking in on a weekly basis. So if you've got a site that doesn't have cron set up and doesn't have visitors, or you have localhost websites, that's how we have such a huge discrepancy between like sites that have been installed total and sites that are currently active. So anyway, kind of interesting. It is nice that we did finally get Travis's numbers out of there, and we've updated core to make it so that pull requests that trigger tests don't report as active installs, which has been kind of our big holdup there, that we had hundreds of additional sites that weren't actually real. Actually, Travis, it turned out, has in total reported over 16,000 Backdrop installs because we run a lot of tests. So that's great for our testing, but was highly skewing all of our numbers.
I'd also like to say, like, I know people are probably going to compare Backdrop's numbers to Drupal numbers, and then it looks kind of sad because you're like, wow, Drupal has a lot more sites than us. But, like, if you compare us to any other project in, like, the first 2 years of existence, having 200 sites, like, actively running is kind of a huge thing. It's, like, that's a lot more than I was expecting. Like, I was like, well, I've got, like, 3, and you've got 3, and so we're looking at, like, maybe 20. But, like, 200, that's big. So I just want to say that I know that we're used to seeing Drupal numbers, and these numbers might seem small, but, like, to me, it looks like success. So I just want to thank everybody for running backdrop sites and believing in this thing and hopefully having some fun while you're doing it.
Yeah, so those will be public in the near future. We're just making sure that we don't have any inaccuracies before we actually publish those. Let's see. We have some more wish list items. We'd like to make it so that we have charts on those things so you can see the growth over time, as well as we'd like to start tracking individual features that are turned on or off on Backdrop websites rather than just what modules they're running. Both of those have issues that are linked in the agenda. Let's see, another item on here, Drush for Backdrop. We've had a prototype of a Drush extension that works for Backdrop that is pretty exciting. It actually works, but we still have some pretty serious issues with it. It's in the Backdrop contrib group under Backdrop contrib/Drush. If you'd like to take a look at it and help work on it. It's a Drush extension, so you throw it in your .drush directory in your home folder, and that makes it so that Drush basically can recognize Backdrop and work with Backdrop in addition to Drupal. We also had a note from Greg Anderson over at Pantheon that Pantheon now has the ability to locate a copy of Drush within your core directory, or within your installation, I should say. So that means that it's possible for us to start including Drush in our upstream for Pantheon, like a copy of Drush and the Drush extension for Backdrop. And that in theory, that would make it so that Pantheon would use our copy of Drush that had the extension already loaded in it. And that would make it so things like running update.php and cron and things like that would work on Pantheon, which would be great.
Hey, Nate, he actually thinks that we just need the Backdrop extension in the upstream now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's been helping. I have a sample site, and he's been doing some Pantheon side stuff to get that tested out. So we're working on it.
Awesome. That's even better. Because that sounds way better than needing a whole copy of Drush. Because I'd prefer that Drush itself were updated and maintained outside of us. Even though they'll be doing the maintenance and we just would need to pull it in, I like it a lot better that way. That's great. Let's see. We don't have any specific items that we've got mentioned here, but we have a whole section in the agenda for GitHub automation. There's a whole slew of things that we would like to automate in between our processes, backdropcms.org, and GitHub. There's a tag for that in the backdropcms.org issue queue, just labeled GitHub automation. If anyone's interested in working with the GitHub API, we could really use some help there. And we can get you access to backdropcms.org and a development account there so that you can write integrations between GitHub and backdropcms.org. If we have any volunteers, then just reach out to us in any number of ways, info@backdropcms.org or over Gitter or IRC. Let's see, the flagship website, backdropcms.org. Jen, I usually hand this part off to you. Do you want to take it over?
Maybe I'll even unmute myself. Okay, so backdropcms.org. We currently have allowed people to sign into the website, and just so you guys all know what you can do there, normal users should be able to create a testimonial. They should be able to list an event on the news page. There's a list of upcoming events that are Backdrop friendly, and I think that might be it. But in the near future, we're also going to let you guys add organizations that'll be listed in the Backdrop service providers section and add showcases of websites built with Backdrop. In the far future, we're also probably trying to figure out some kind of jobs listing, list yourself for hire kind of service like GitHub has, or maybe we'll just integrate with that somehow. And speaking of integrating with GitHub, we also want to do some kind of a single sign-on solution so that if you already have a GitHub account and you don't have a Backdrop account, people don't need to go through the process of creating a separate account. They can kind of push a button and it'll sync them up. And hopefully that'll end up letting us do things like allow people to edit their own project nodes on backdropcms.org in addition to the projects they are maintainers for on GitHub. We haven't quite figured out what's necessary for that yet. We're currently just pulling in everything directly. So there's other things, like we can always use help on backdropcms.org. I know people sometimes listen to this meeting later and they're looking for ways to get involved. A couple of things we could use help with right now is the modules, themes, and layouts. Search pages and landing pages have designs that have not been completely implemented, and a lot of that is because we're missing some of the data that we need to display on the pages. Things like links to the GitHub issue queue or the number of downloads. This is all information that exists. We just don't have it in a way that we can actually display it usefully on the page, and so there's some development tasks there. There's also some kind of front-endy tasks too in terms of taking like the layout for the find a theme page and actually implementing it. Right now we're using the design that we had for the find a module page on modules, themes, and layouts, and we need to figure out how to get those separated. And then the layouts page is also going to eventually need its own design too. And we're struggling with this issue right now where currently our projects are allowed to have one screenshot for themes and for layouts, and we want to maybe eventually change that to have more than one. So we just need to figure out like whatever we implement now in the future, we're going to have to change it. So not doing a bunch of extra work we know we're going to throw away, but maybe do like step 1 of what will eventually be step 5. So if anyone wants to help work on backdropcms.org, we would love help with those things. Also, if you want to help us figure out what we want to put into our showcase section, like what information we should be collecting from people about sites they're building, we could use help with that. And also what information we should be collecting about service providers. Like, you know, I looked at the Drupal organization page, and there's a lot of information they're collecting. I'm not sure we need all of it, at least now, because we don't have that many organizations yet. But I'm also not sure whether that's something people will come back and update later, so maybe we should collect a lot of information. I don't know. So there's definitely a lot of work we could use help with on our website, even if you don't feel like maybe you can get into like helping on Backdrop. We definitely could use help with backdropcms.org. It's a great place to get started. Under news announcements, we posted a review of the Sandcamp Drupal Camp in the blog last week, which is kind of a high-level review of our full-day training class, which I thought was pretty exciting, and a little thank you to the camp organizers. And upcoming next, which is not this week but next week, we want to do a blog on benchmarks for Drupal 7 versus Backdrop. I know Nate has been having some good ideas about how to do that, but not actually getting the benchmarks done. So if anybody else has another blog post that you want to put up next week, we're of course open to getting any of that stuff done too. So if you have a story you want to share about Backdrop or information you'd like to share, we are trying to figure out how to kind of better organize our blog news section to be either bloggy or newsy or something that's kind of bridging both. So we're open to any kind of information you want to post up there, like tutorials or personal stories or whatever it is. So, that's okay. So if you have a blog you want to write, if you post an issue or a comment on issue number 158, we will add it to the schedule. And the sooner you have it ready, we can kind of like squeeze it in at any time. So that way, if one of our other blogs ends up being slow to come out, we can use something else. So I think it's just really important that people know that there's things going on in Backdrop, and it doesn't really matter what those things are. The more information, the better. That way, people can kind of follow up as they want. We have a to-do to send a newsletter to all of our people. Maybe I'll work on that this week since I'm not writing a blog post. Because we haven't even sent a newsletter yet saying that Backdrop 1.3 is out yet. We're now on 1.3.3. We've got a lot of stuff cool stuff going on with the website. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on in the next version of Backdrop. There's a lot of activity and excitement in the air, and I think everybody should be notified. So I'll try and get a draft of that ready to go today. Maybe we can get that out before the next call so we don't have to keep saying it's not done yet. It would be nice. And then also speaking of marketing, we know we're developers not particularly good at marketing, so we've created an issue in the Backdrop CMS, or not an issue, a whole tag in the backdropcms.org queue for marketing related stuff. And maybe that's not necessarily the right place for that issue, but it is the place we had, so that's where all those issues currently are. So if you're interested in marketing and want to help us out with spreading the word or coming up with ideas about what we should be doing to spread the word, go ahead and check out the audience marketing tag in that queue and see if there's things we're missing or things that you could help with. It'd be great. All right, let's talk about Backdrop itself. So Backdrop 1.3.3 came out a couple of weeks ago at the end of February. And it included all of the changes that went into the 2 latest versions of Drupal 7. So thank you everybody who worked on getting those pull requests merged in. And we have the next version of Backdrop 1.3.4 upcoming. We know we've got a couple of bugs that we think maybe are urgent enough that we should roll a release when they get resolved. So you can check out the issue tracker for that if you want. We have a tag for 1.3.4. I don't know, Nate, if you know what those bugs are. Is there one I think is layouts related that every now and then...
Yeah, there's a really nasty bug that we found that if you set a certain accept header, like Internet Explorer 8, then your layout loses all of its blocks. And if that gets saved in your cache, then you can end up with a pretty broken website. So that 1.3.4 will probably come out in the very near future, like sooner rather than later. Once we don't have a fix for that yet, but as soon as we do, we'll probably make a new release.
Okay. And then the next minor version of Backdrop we're working on, Backdrop 1.4, has a bunch of things queued for the list to get in. There are a bunch of little tiny bugs with the rich text editor that just makes the user experience less than ideal. We'd like to get those resolved. We would like a new version of the references module, so it'll be a little bit more similar to entity reference from Drupal 7, but we didn't really like the code style in entity reference. It wasn't really in line with the majority of Backdrop code style, so we're rewriting it to be a little bit more like references module for Drupal 7, which was a little cleaner and more straightforward. So we're going to try and get that reference solution into Backdrop 1.4. We'd also like to get a redirect solution. We've got path and path auto in core, but that can end up in a situation where we sometimes have multiple paths to the same piece of content. It would be much nicer if they could just redirect. So we're going to try and figure out how to get some global redirect action and then maybe some of redirect module, which provides a UI to control that as well. More importantly, or maybe more excitingly, we'd also like to get a new front-end theme into Backdrop 1.4 so people can actually ship their site without needing to install something else. And I know Wes has been doing a ton of work on the new front-end theme. We got to see a little preview of it last week, so thank you so much for helping with that. I don't know if you want to give a little update on where things are.
Nothing new. It was my bachelor party this past weekend, so.
Oh, yeah. Congrats.
Thank you. Ta-da.
Ta-da! So, okay, we've got a new front-end theme underway. I'm super excited to see that progress. I really love the way it's going. And then also super complicated but very exciting is trying to figure out how to get a new set of front-end, or not front-end, all-over layouts in core. So right now, Backdrop core ships with 4 layouts. You get 1 column, 2 columns on the right, 2 columns on the left, and then a layout that matches the Bartik regions from Drupal 7. And that's not usually sufficient to launch a comprehensive website. It's pretty good to launch a basic website, but Backdrop wants to be a comprehensive tool, so it would be good if we could get better layouts out of the box. And that's going to require a little bit of thinking in terms of how we handle an upgrade path, in terms of how our grid system is going to work. Are we going to adopt an existing one, or write our own in terms of how classes line up across layouts. There's just a bunch of kind of careful thinking we need to do to make sure that, first of all, sites that are currently running aren't going to break, but also people who write contrib themes aren't going to have a ton of work to do to support all of the new core layouts as well. So we should figure out how to get that resolved and hopefully added for our May 15th release of Backdrop 1.4. Okay, if you are interested in everything that's on our roadmap for Backdrop, you can check out backdropcms.org/roadmap. We also have milestones for some of our releases in GitHub, so there is a milestone for 1.4 that also has a bunch of issues that have rolled over from 1.3 that we'd also like to get in there as well. At any time, we are interested in fixing both user experience issues and developer experience issues, and this is something that we think will help make Backdrop a better product. So if there's something that's bothering you about the user interface, file an issue. We're definitely interested in resolving those. Or if you're writing a contributed module, theme, or layout and you find something funky about how you have to do it, we're interested in figuring out what that is so that we can try and get to the bottom of it, and if possible, solve it. It's a little harder to solve some of those developer experience issues without breaking APIs, but it would at least be great to document what they are so that in the future, when we do get to Backdrop 2, we can resolve them in a way that makes sense to make things better for developers in the future. So if you have an issue for user experience or developer experience, we are putting square brackets in the issue title with either UX or DX. So if you're interested in working on those issues, you can also search the queue for that tag. A couple of super exciting things that we'd also like to get done in the near future relating to user experience include the project browser. So this is a tool that'll let you browse a list of modules, themes, or layouts directly from your Backdrop site. It got a whole bunch of work, I think, kind of in the middle of the last release cycle, and then a whole bunch of work at the very end, but it wasn't quite enough to get it in. And so we are hoping to get the remaining work on Project Browser done early in this cycle so that we can get it into 1.4. I think that's going to be a huge user experience benefit to anybody who's running Backdrop 1.4 or later, to just be able to install anything from their site. Yes, Nate, do you have an update on Project Browser?
Yeah, although Andy's here in the meeting as Mike isn't on, but I know he'd been waiting for quite a while to get the Project Browser server back up. We had a little bit of an issue where in my code review for the core pull request, I suggested that we change the query strings to make them match the way that views does, like items per page and ordering. And what happened was we accidentally deployed the change to backdropcms.org, but not to the contrib module, which made it so that they were talking different languages, essentially. But we've now updated project module, project browser, server, project browser server, project browser, and the backdropcms.org project browser, all of them to use the new API as recommended. So we're unblocked there, and the project browser server is now back up and running correctly. It's also really exciting because we got the usage statistics back in place. You can now sort by popular projects within the project browser, which is really exciting. And I checked that out, and I think that it's working, which is great because we didn't have any numbers previously, but the code was all there to actually utilize the numbers. And now that the numbers are there, you can actually sort by popular projects, which is great. I tried out Project Browser Server as well now, or Project Browser, the contrib version, now that the server is back online, and it works really well. It's really exciting. So I'm really stoked to see that in its core iteration, and we should discuss more about how that's going to happen in that issue, which is 1399. So very exciting. That's all I've got.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for the update. So the other thing we're working on, which is a little trixier, is trying to get a new field UI The field UI has been something that's been kind of a pain point in Drupal development since Drupal 6. It stayed the same all through Drupal 7. It's just this frustrating and backed up as it was in Drupal. We know it's a problem. We have some excellent designs that Wes worked on to help us kind of improve that. And I think we could definitely get a new field UI in. That is something that can be developed as a separate module because field UI is a separate module in core. So we could build something entirely new in Contrib and then just put it in at some point and then disable the old field UI if we wanted to. But I would love to see that for Backdrop 1.4. Not sure how likely to see it done by then, but if anybody else is really frustrated by field UI, it totally could happen. Okay. Let's see. Let's talk about sprints. So every Thursday, we usually do a little remote sprint where we all hang out in either IRC or on Gitter or in the GitHub issue queue or sometimes even in Reddit and talk about the things that we're working on in Backdrop. We can get help from each other, we can help each other, and we can help move things forward. So I'm really looking forward to doing that today. If you have some time from your company to volunteer for open source projects, if you want to do it on a Thursday, that would be fantastic. Of course, if anyone has any time to contribute to Backdrop that's not on a Thursday, that is also great. We take evenings, weekends, and holidays if that's all you have. Or, just an hour a year is fine as well. So definitely the GitHub issue queue is a good place to put your thoughts, even if there's nobody else there. Someone will eventually stumble along and find them. Let's see, if you are interested in attending an event where you can talk to other people about Backdrop, you can now go to backdropcms.org/events to see a list of events posted, hopefully by the event organizers that are upcoming. If you are an event organizer and you have an event where you want people to come and talk about Backdrop, it's also a good idea to post those events there. And there is an iCal feed of this information if you want to subscribe to them. It's currently hosted on Google Calendar, but we are going to try and get individual event information available on our website too in the near future. So go ahead and check that out. Shiny, new, exciting, all that stuff. And if you want books on Backdrop, there's currently one book out called Migrating from Drupal to Backdrop that's available now on Apress. And a new beginning Backdrop book will be out probably second quarter this year. So that's the end of the official agenda. There's been a whole bunch of conversation in the group chat today that I haven't been paying attention. Is there anything that we should talk about in there that I missed?
I don't think so. It's mostly just updates on the issues. Basically, people saying there's things happening in the issue. Go and take a look at it. Oh, there was actually. You brought this up, Jen, but there's a really interesting tool that's out there for having user agreements automated.
Yeah, that Eric actually found that and sent that to me on Gitter this morning. It only works for individual projects, but if we're going to end up moving off of the group model to the individual project model anyway, that might be okay. I filed an issue asking if it worked for groups or if anyone else was interested in making it work for groups, but that might be a good starting point for us, regardless of which direction we go.
Yeah, they've actually already written back. They wrote back 11 minutes ago during our meeting saying they like the idea. We could even evaluate the option to only use a GitHub team to track people having signed the CLA.
That's great.
Would love to get some more feedback on this. So basically, all that we need to do is swarm the issue with all of our Backdrop contributors. That might be a little too obvious.
Backdrop needs it. Backdrop needs it. Backdrop needs it.
Yeah.
Broken record.
This would be really great for our team. Not mentioning that we're all in the same team. Any other questions?
Anyone wants to add?
Okay, well, everybody, thank you so much for joining. A great meeting as always, and we've got so many things that are happening. We will all be doing our normal Thursday. Well, not all of us, but a lot of us will be doing our Thursday code sprints. You can meet up with us in IRC or in Gitter, and of course, the GitHub issue queue is where we will be conversing back and forth. So I hope to see all of you guys on the internet. Thanks so much for joining and for watching.
Happy Thursday.